Welcome to the People Zoom Readers Theater performance event, Trumpgate, DEI, and Banning Books. We are a very diverse group with different backgrounds and experiences, but we are single-minded in our desire to combat prejudice, hate, and injustice through drama. We aren't politicians, and we aren't professional performers. We are an ensemble of caring people who have learned that we can accomplish truly meaningful things together. And we feel uplifted when we share our concerns with each other and then share them with an audience. Hopefully, you'll stay for our follow-up discussion and share your concerns and your suggestions for rescuing our country. And now let's begin.
Welcome. Most of you here know me, Darnell Williams, manager of our community center. I'm so glad to see you. I don't have to tell you, these are not normal times. It should be obvious to anybody who's listening to the news, reading the papers, and engaging on social media platforms that we are fighting for the very heart and soul of our American democracy. The Trump administration has been moving at a dizzying pace at dismantling our norms, our traditions, government departments, agencies, and everything else that represents stability and our democratic society. And to make matters worse, Trump, with his power of the presidency, is destroying long-valued relationships with our friends and allies on our very borders and abroad. His obsession with acquiring Canada and Greenland is insulting, and the trade war is a self-inflicted financial crisis. I think all of us are in a bit of a panic. We've been so startled by what's happening that it's been hard to react effectively. We know one thing: we can't afford to normalize what is happening and accept the direction that Trump is taking our country. The time for sitting back and waiting for the Messiah to appear is over. So we thought it would be helpful to call a meeting, share our thoughts on the current situation, and energize each other so that we can participate in a truly effective response and inspire others to join us. Nicholas Mason, our local legislator, and I came up with the general topics for tonight: Trump's disruption of the federal government, his dismantling of DEI, and his efforts to alter the history, language, culture, and character of our country, which includes banning books. All of you are welcome to jump in when you have something you'd like to say. Since we have a lot of new faces, it would be great if you'd introduce yourself the first time you speak.
Hi, I'm Tanya Roberts, and I'm here because I'm so frustrated with what is going on. I'm one of the older members of our community, old enough to remember when we had two functioning parties. Look, it's always been messy. It kind of makes sense because we have three branches of government and their jobs are spelled out in the Constitution. And one of them is to check the power of the other two. Now, well, in my opinion, if our government's checks and balances are operating as they should, the damage that we are experiencing today could be limited. But to our regret, the Republicans in Congress, the majority in the branch of government designated to make laws and check the limits of the executive branch, have abandoned their oversight. Their allegiance to Trump has superseded their commitment to their constitutional role and the needs of the voters who elected them.
Tanya, you raised a very important point. When the Democratic legislatures call out Trump's actions that violate constitutional structure, we see the Republicans who fear Trump's retribution show no interest in questioning his blatant disregard for Congress's role. As you must be aware, Democrats have resorted to the only way possible to stop his efforts. That's the courts. And while the courts have been able to slow down and in some cases reverse Trump's firings, Their effectiveness is still in question due to Trump's routine use of appeals.
What's driving me nuts is the way Trump has rewarded Musk, the richest man in the world, who used massive amounts of money to help elect Trump. I'm Noah Simon, a federal worker who was furious with the way Musk, as the head of a newly created Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, cut federal spending. And thus far, Musk and his team have terminated a slew of government grants, contracts, and funds, and disrupted the lives of thousands of hardworking people, which includes me.
Hi, I'm Sam Collins, school administrator, and I find it terribly ironic that Elon Musk is so concerned about money that federal workers, agencies, and academic institutions and scientific laboratories are receiving when he and his companies, particularly Tesla and SpaceX, have received at least $38 billion in government contracts, loans, subsidies, and tax credits over the past 2 decades, according to a Washington Post analysis.
Yeah, as I said, I'm one of those people who was randomly fired, and I'm grateful to be here today so that I could tell you what this layoff has done to me and my family. We were doing all right, not an affluent life, but we all had reason to get up in the morning, goals to achieve, a decent home, food, and a few extras now and then. My children had what they needed to go to school with their heads high. My performance was rated extremely high. I tried never to miss a day of work. So when I saw that letter suggesting that I was fired for a poor performance, I knew it was bogus. But still, it hurt. It hurt that my colleagues and I are just pawns in a game that Trump and Musk created to make themselves look good. Our lives are completely transformed. Anxiety, grief, disbelief, and fear of the future. This is our steady diet now. What this has done to my children, our family, there are no words.
Hi, I'm Kiara Farrell, a physician's assistant, and no, I can only tell you how sorry I am. The impact of Trump's firings on people like you is awful. But I think we are smart enough to know that the harm doesn't stop there. We won't know just how many mistakes, fatal mistakes, could have been avoided if Trump and Musk have approached the improvement of the federal government in a professional manner. Consult the head of the agencies, study the systems, observe the workforce, and then recommend practical changes. A smart, proven approach that we could have faith in.
As if the firings of federal workers weren't bad enough, the tariff war, what Trump created, certainly could have been limited if not avoided, and Congress asserted itself, using the powers of the Constitution intended for legislative oversight on taxation, tariffs, and related financial matters.
And the third branch of government could affect Trump's executive order to end government support for diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI programs. His anti-DEI push could eventually raise concerns about First Amendment rights.
I had faith in the mission of the diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. I knew that they weren't perfect, but the idea of celebrating diversity makes sense since we are a nation of immigrants. I'm Fen Sang, a neighborhood librarian. Perhaps some programs were a little extreme, but the goal of trying to ensure that all people, students, and workers are given equal opportunities to learn and succeed makes sense to me. What is the harm of giving minorities a special lift when for centuries they had been treated like second-class citizens? Apparently, Trump doesn't share my thoughts.
Frankly speaking, I don't really think he understands the intrinsic value of these programs. When executive sensitively, it has been shown that DEI in education directly shapes the learning environment, affects student outcomes, and prepares young minds to engage with a diverse world.
Well, his lack of understanding was dramatically proclaimed when he said in his address to the American people, "We've ended the tyranny of so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion policies all across the entire federal government and indeed the private sector and our military. And our country will be woke no longer." I'm Mateo Diaz. I'm an educator, and right now I'm terribly concerned about the way our president is so easily rolling back 60 years of progress. There are countless examples of his desire to rebrand American history and rebrand the American character and culture, starting with our very language. Where is our outrage? Our daily protests in DC, in Congress? Did you know that his first hours back in the White House in January, Trump signed an executive order titled "Restoring Freedom of Speech and Ending Federal Censorship"? Restoring freedom of speech? Is this a joke? He was actually imposing rules on language, ordering the government to recognize only two genders, and shutting down any diversity, equity, and inclusion programs.
Yes, I remember that in that executive order, he redefined energy to exclude solar and wind power. And I don't know what science book he is reading.
It's all crazy.
Crazy. And within days, not just the word diversity, but also clean energy and climate change began vanishing from federal websites. Other institutions and organizations started scrubbing their websites as well. Scientists who receive federal funding were told to end any activities that contradicted Trump's executive orders. Well, I'm Chang Liu, and I'm one of those researchers. Perhaps I should be telling you this, but shouldn't be telling you this, but I do know that a number of government employees, at least the ones who hadn't been fired, have been trying to find ways to take their climate work underground. But they're worried that even acknowledging the existence of global warming could put their jobs at risk.
The Trump administration's crackdown on words tied to progressive causes reflects the rise of what's been called the woke right, a reactionary movement with its own language rules in opposition to woke terms. I'm Charlie Terrace, a musician and music teacher, and I simply can't believe that Trump or anybody has the right to arbitrarily ban words that is so prevalent in our language today.
He is deleting years of progress, deleting who we are and what we have achieved.
Well, I'm glad to see so many of you know what's going on. I'm Nicholas Mason, and as your local legislator, I'm here to say that we can't let this continue. I'm looking at you, each of you, and what I see is a beautiful mosaic of people who are very different but contribute significantly to the mosaic of America. We should celebrate who we are and not erase it. Together, we must find a way to prevent Trump or anybody else from turning the clock back. As you know, the number of courageous people in our history who have sacrificed their lives for the progress we have made is immeasurable. We have the right, in fact, the obligation to demand for them and ourselves that each member of our mosaic is treated with respect and accorded the rights that being an American affords us.
Thank you, Nicholas. I couldn't have said it better. I also appreciate the diversity in our zoo. I wonder which animals have pissed Trump off and should worry about their demise now that Trump has given himself oversight of the federal zoo.
Good question.
Bad joke. I just felt a little levity might help. I think all of us are overly stressed out.
Oh, yes, we are. And this feeling of impotence is just not good for our health.
Hi, I'm Eden Several, one of those veterans you are hearing a lot about. I won't tell you my story, but I will tell you how I feel. Frustrated, angry. If nothing else, we need to find a way to reach every American with the reminder that ours is a government of the people, by the people, and it will take each of us to stop Trump.
No doubt about the fact that we have to do a much better job with social media platforms. But I think we should be using billboards. Yes, billboards on highways and posters on street poles in every town, in bold colors.
What exactly are you suggesting?
These posters and billboards could include the lies juxtaposed with the truth. The obnoxious executive orders and tariffs are crashing our economy and international relationships. We could also post directives like call or email your congressman, tell them to stop Trump and Musk.
Folks, it's up to us. We need to apply the pressure on the Republican Party to take back their powers and put Trump and Musk and Vance in their place as servants of the people.
I like your idea, Charlie. There's no limit to our treasured institutions that is now altering to suit his supporters. I was speechless when I heard that he took over the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C. Yeah, he fired all the Democrats on a board that used to be bipartisan, and he made himself the head. In that capacity, Trump canceled the planned tour of the children's musical Finn, which sold out during its initial run at the Kennedy Center. This play follows a young shark who realizes that he may relate more to the smaller, gentler fishes. He wants to live his truth while still holding family traditions. It's a show that would make growing up a little bit easier for someone who feels like they're different. He prefers to keep these children feeling like fishes out of water, floundering around with their lives. It's so selfish of him to deprive young people from seeing an enjoyable play with such a smart message.
Pitiful, actually. Fortunately, there are some signs of resistance. Did you ever hear about the Equity Arc?
Yes, I have. I'm a musician and I followed this story very closely. Equity Arc is a Chicago-based nonprofit which connects student musicians of color with mentors and opportunities. And there's a good reason for Equity Arc. When you consider the fact that American orchestras today are, and I actually have some figures to share, 80% white, 11% Asian, 5% Hispanic, and 2% Black. Well, there was supposed to be a concert which would feature 22 high school musicians of color who competed for a spot to perform with the U.S. Marine Band. I was very excited about this project.
I was too. And then I was stunned when I heard it was canceled. The executive order of DEI led to cancellation of the U.S. Marine Band collaboration. Can you believe this? the Marine Band wasn't allowed to participate in this event at all. Fortunately, there is a bit of happy ending thanks to CBS 60 Minutes. CBS covered the cost of the plane tickets and traveled to bring the students to the music center at Strathmore, near Washington, where they joined with military band veterans for the concert that was not meant to be heard. Yes, veterans of the U.S. Marine Band came out of retirement to play with these amazing students.
I heard about this too. I even wrote down what one of the students said about the cancellation. Rishabh Jain said, if we're a society that's suppressing art, we're a society that is afraid of what it might reveal about itself. If we're suppressing music, we're suppressing emotions. We're suppressing expression. We're suppressing vulnerability. We're suppressing the very essence of what makes us human. We are devaluing our own humanity. We are degrading our own humanity. This is a student talking. Very impressive.
Well, Trump is hell-bent on eliminating anything, anybody, and any place that documents our history, our progress. Trump's recent executive order to close the Smithsonian Institute's diversity office and eliminate what he considers, quote, divisive race-centered ideology from Smithsonian museums, educational and research centers, and as mentioned, the National Zoo, unquote. This is troubling. His desire to erase significant parts of our history should concern every American.
It certainly does concern me and probably everybody here today. I'm sorry, but I don't recognize anything about the country I thought I was living in. I don't see how this type of behavior fits in with the Bill of Rights. Where is our freedom of speech if the president requires certain common words and certain programs that he doesn't like to be deleted from websites, colleges, universities, and businesses? The scrapping of all the DEI programs in public schools and universities is absurd. And yet, with the president's threat of withholding huge amounts of funds, universities are caving in.
Can you blame them?
I question them. I'm Reba Jefferson, a lawyer, and I've thought a great deal about this situation. When we talk about public schools, well, perhaps the answer relies on those in power in the state. But these elite universities, many with large endowments, surely these critical institutions to a democracy must stand for the values and principles of our country. They have lots of money that could hold them over until a normal president emerges. Of course, this is my opinion.
I agree with you. If you cave in, he'll never stop. Look what he and his psychopaths are doing to hurt the LGBTQ community. What could be a better example of Trump trying to erase history than telling us about our genders and how we should behave? Please tell Trump that nobody invented homosexuality, not even Hollywood. It has existed since the beginning of time, and it should be of no surprise that people have questioned their gender identities throughout this century. So to lie, to suggest that children are being forced to question their sexual identity is outrageous. Nobody is forcing them to do anything. Fortunately, we had progressed to a state where young people have been relatively, and I emphasize relatively, comfortable with this kind of questioning. That's why we're hearing more about this. Our society had just made it easier for young people to admit their truth. No matter what Trump or the governor of Florida says in a speech or executive order, they will never be able to change human nature. Never.
And one place where a lot of young people can do their research is the library.
Perhaps this is the perfect time to start our segment on banning books. We know for sure that the books that are banned in public schools and libraries are those centering on the very subjects Trump would like to suppress: racism, sexuality, and gender identity. Subjects that should be available to all people in the United States. Here's how the banning works.
It's too easy. I'm a witness. I'm Fatima Abad, and I serve on school board. So this is how it works. And I'm sure Fan, a librarian, will back me up. A book is removed from school curriculums and or public libraries because a person or group requested. Most public schools and libraries have boards made up of elected officials or people appointed by elected officials who have the power to remove books from the schools and libraries they oversee.
Well, this is wrong. As a very wise librarian said, a book ban is significant because it restricts others' access to books and the ideas contained within those books based on another person's often ideologically or politically motivated objection.
Yes, it is very wrong. And very often the challenge starts with members of Moms for Liberty.
Who or what is Moms for Liberty?
I don't want you to think this is my opinion, so I will quote from the Wikipedia definition. Quote, Moms for Liberty is an American political organization that advocates against school curricula that mention LGBTQ rights, race and ethnicity, critical race theory, and discrimination. Multiple chapters have also campaigned to ban books that address gender and sexuality from the school libraries, unquote.
Am I the only one that finds the name confusing? The Moms for Liberty? What liberty are they talking about? When they want to tell schools and libraries what books should be allowed. It's hypocrisy. These moms and their followers don't want their children to learn the truth. That is, any negative truth about their country. They don't want them to learn the truth about foul language that people really use. I personally don't like curse words, and I prefer not to use them. But that's me. That's not what our children are exposed to television, in the movies, social media, and many homes.
Moms for Liberty don't want children to know about the violence that was perpetrated against fellow Americans or by Americans. Unfortunately, this type of behavior existed and still does. We can't alter the pattern if we don't acknowledge it exists.
Sure, it is definitely an example of hypocrisy. These moms and their followers voted for a man who has sexually abused women, who has committed crimes against the government, against people who work for him, inspired an insurrection, lies all the time, cheated on his wives, including one who was at home with their new baby. Excuse me, this is the person they want their children to respect as their president? They need to wake up and notice that their emperor is not wearing any clothes. They can't have it both ways.
Yes, it's time to take off the blindfold that money, power, and a sophisticated use of social media covered up. Trump is not anybody's savior, and neither are his followers. He is certainly not making our country safer.
And yet, the people who support Trump, the man who pardoned and released the insurrectionists who attacked our Congress, are banning authors. Who are these so-called dangerous authors? Simply people who want to tell their stories and open our eyes to the history of slavery and injustice, and open our eyes to the pains that the LGBTQ community have been suffering throughout the years.
That's right. And the stories in these books they are banning tell us of mistreatment, loneliness, unacceptance, bullying, and dysfunctional families, subjects that a lot of our students are aware of. It's true that students who read these books will certainly be exposed to some hard things, like the horrors of war and the tragedies resulting from racial, religious, gender, and age discrimination. But there is an advantage. Hopefully, they learn from these experiences without having to physically live them.
In my opinion, people who are banning books must have forgotten the unique benefits and needs that a book can satisfy. We all remember how books can transform our world, expand it in ways we could never imagine. We have an opportunity to lose ourselves in characters and their life's journey and benefit from their mistakes and rejoice in their achievements. We can learn about the negative consequences of taking drugs and therefore avoid them. We can learn about a person's blueprint for achieving goals, realizing dreams that might seem unobtainable. We learn about the heartbreak of unrequited love and know that we're not the only one who has suffered such pain. A book or a character in a story could be a friend to take you into your real world and accompanies you when you are taking a risk, battling a disease, a bully, a dysfunctional sibling, or even a parent.
I can't agree more with you both. I wonder if it's possible that Moms for Liberty realize that when we remove books that are biographical memoirs, we are basically telling students and adults, stay in the closet. We don't want to hear from you. That is a Radnor High School student's response to the removal of Gender Queer, written by Maya Kababi. This book is an amazing 2019 graphic memoir that recounts Kababi's journey from adolescent to adulthood and the author's exploration of gender identity and sexuality. The author ultimately identifies as being outside of the gender binary. It's a true story, and it's an award-winning book. Nevertheless, its inclusion in American libraries has been challenged based on the presence of sexually explicit illustrations.
Well, those illustrations are just representing the truth about our bodies and the experiences we human beings have. I'm Mel Ryder, a pediatrician, and it saddens me that the Moms for Liberty and other conservative groups might like to pretend that only male and female genders exist and sex is outlawed until marriage. But that's not the truth. The truth is extremely valuable to students like Mia Kripke, an 18-year-old who told board members that when she started to question her sexuality at age 13, he was confident that she would be accepted in the Radnor School community. But since the book was banned, she's now worried about the community that's being created. She said books like Gender Queer and Girl Made of Stars, a young adult novel featuring a bisexual character, had helped her discover her identity. If you're taking this away, she said, you're taking away our ability to discover who we are. That should not be what Radnor is about.
It seems like even in the year 2025, we don't want our children to know the truth about the human condition. And with social media filling in the gaps with perhaps dangerous, misleading information, our children need books that might help them in a healthier, more honest way.
What are these moms afraid of? Being challenged? Having their values and their lifestyle challenged? Are they embarrassed that their generation deprived minorities of the education and opportunities they deserved and needed to rise above the place in society they were relegated? Are they afraid their children who may think differently will be empowered?
And violence. Yes, violence. I hate violence of any kind, but unfortunately, it exists in our society. Are they so worried about the violence that children will be exposed to by reading these books? It's hypocrisy. If they are truly afraid the harm exposure to violence will have on their children, why are so many of our television programs and movies dominated by violence? Why do the people they vote for make it too easy for members of our society to own guns and lots of guns?
These are excellent questions. I just heard that a book we just finished reading in my son's class, The Giver, by Lois Lowry, has been banned in some states. Why?
I know this book too. It's about a boy, Jonas, who's living in a seemingly utopian society. He's chosen as the receiver of memory. It's his job to hold the community's collective memories, good and bad, and he shares these with the giver. But as Jonas experiences these memories, he begins to question the kind of society he is living in, one where there is sameness and opposed to individuality and freedom. As a result of his receiving more memories and understanding what this society lacks, he decides to escape it. My first thought is The Giver, though a work of fiction, provides a vision of what book banners are aiming for. A society where people are so protected from pain or grief, citizens' senses so dulled, their lives so managed that they don't realize that they have no freedom, and those in power have no fear of their rebellion. Does this sound familiar?
Please continue.
Of course. We are told the reasons for the banning are the adult themes, sexuality, violence, lethal injection, infanticide, suicide, and euthanasia. Well, we know that all these topics may not be covered in Hallmark or Disney movies, but the truth is they exist. And it's not far-fetched that an 11-year-old may have been exposed to real-life situations that depict these practices or even worse. Pretending they don't exist will not help our children, but reading about them in a context that makes sense and discussing them in a protected environment in school could be very meaningful. In fact, helpful for students who are exposed to these things but are afraid to discuss them aloud with family members, even friends. My students appreciated the opportunity to discuss these topics that came up in The Giver.
I think we know the consequences of ignorance, of overly protecting our children, especially our teens. Reality isn't something we can totally control all the time. Whether we like it or not, we live in a time when phones seem to be the most prized possession, when phones connect people to their friends, family, and unfortunately to strangers, good and bad.
Many of the banned books in America are sexually explicit. The people that ban them say they're pornographic. Well, it's the way they look at it. Studies have shown that the United States' close ties with certain religions has resulted in a culturally more guarded view of sex and sexuality. This has been changing, but for conservatives, there is still much resistance to young people knowing too much about their bodies, human creation, and sexual pleasure. The truth is, pediatric experts believe it's very important that children learn about their bodies as soon as they're old enough to be aware of them, and they should learn the correct anatomical terms.
For sure, our home and our schools should be places for questions and truthful answers. Nobody is telling our children to seek a book that we think might be inappropriate. But shouldn't we be grateful if our children can find a book that describes deeply unpleasant situations they can identify with? Books that help them feel less alone? Books that can enable them to empathize rather than condemn people who may be living in a dysfunctional home or with people who are physically or mentally disabled.
Yes, knowledge can be very useful and life-affirming. It is unwise to deny our children the opportunities to read about the world they live in. For so many reasons, I think all children should have the opportunity to read Anne Frank's diary, the graphic adaptation.
What could possibly be bad about Anne Frank's diary? We all know it's the story of a 13-year-old girl who writes in a diary, which she calls Kitty, about her life in hiding with her family and others during the Holocaust.
I agree. While reading her diary in this graphic adaptation, we see Anne mature over a period of 3 years. The more I think about this version of Anne Frank's diary, the more I see the enormous value. Young girls, perhaps even boys, who read this book can not only understand the suffering of families during the Holocaust and the communities they create to endure, but learn about the way a teenager deals with normal adolescent challenges. We get to experience her emotions, her conflict with her mother, her bodily changes, and the myriad emotions that accompany first love. We also can't help but marvel at Anne's reflections on her situation. I would like to share a memorable excerpt from her book. Quote, "We're much too young to deal with these problems, but they keep thrusting themselves on us until finally we're forced to think up a solution, though most of the time our solutions crumble when faced with the facts. It's difficult in times like these. Ideals, dreams, and cherished hopes rise within us, only to be crushed by grim reality. It's a wonder I haven't abandoned all my ideals. They seem so absurd and impractical, yet I cling to them because I still believe, in spite of everything, that people are truly good at heart. It's utterly impossible for me to build my life on a foundation of chaos, suffering, and death. I see the world being slowly transformed into a wilderness. I hear the approaching thunder that one day will destroy us, too. I feel the suffering of millions. And yet, when I look up at the sky, I somehow feel that everything will change for the better, that this cruelty will end, that peace and tranquility will return once more. In the meantime, I must hold on to my ideals. Perhaps the day will come when I'll be able to realize them." January 15, 1944. End of quote. This was Anne's final entry before she was taken away.
So, what is the problem with this book?
Texas teacher has been fired for assigning it to their 8th grade class. Why? The passages in which Frank describes her own body and thoughtfully considers her own sexuality are being considered pornographic. And the way Aunt Frank's diary depicts the Holocaust makes people feel uncomfortable. Ali Vashi, the host of Vashi, which airs Saturdays and Sundays on MSNBC, created the Vashi Band Book Club. And he said this about Ernst Frank's diary. This book neither diminishes the horror of Holocaust nor does it reveal anything that a teen should have known about the problems of growing up in or outside of Annex, the conflicts with parents, siblings, the discoveries about love, attractions, emotional and physical maturation.
I certainly agree with Ali Velshi. Who's next? Anybody? Tell us about a book that you think is worthy of reading that you know has been challenged or completely banned.
Thank you very much, Darnell. I like to talk about To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I remember reading this book when I was 12 years old, to be exact. The story is set in a small town in Macomb, Alabama, during the Great Depression. Atticus Finch, a white man, is defending a black man, Tom Robinson, who has been erroneously accused of raping a white girl. I've read this book and seen the movie so many times, I think I know every word of the dialogue. You may wonder why this book is so meaningful to me. Well, it's a family, a town, and a time in our history that I knew nothing about. I'm embarrassed to say. I really didn't know such prejudice existed. I grew up in a family that respected all races and religions and would never treat black people or anybody the way they were treated in this story. The use of the N word shocked me, especially the way it was used indiscriminately by people who believed they were superior, but certainly weren't. But the main reason has kept me coming back is the way Atticus Finch, the lawyer, the father of two young children, took on a clearly unwinnable case in this prejudiced town and had the courage, determination, and the eloquence to present an extraordinary defense. It should have been no surprise that his closing statement fell on deaf ears. Robinson, an innocent man, was not exonerated, but Atticus Finch showed me that such people existed, and he inspired me to be such a person. And I know for sure I'm not alone. His closing statement to the jury has probably inspired more young people to become lawyers than anything else. I will now share an excerpt, but do yourself a favor and find the entire speech and read it. Thomas Jefferson once said that all men are created equal. We know all men are not created equal in the sense some people would have us believe. Some people are smarter than others. Some people have more opportunity because they are born with it. Some men make more money than others. Some ladies make better cake than others. Some people are born gifted beyond the normal scope of men. There is one way in this country which all men are created equal. There's one human institution that makes a pauper the equal to a Rockefeller, the stupid man equal of an Einstein, and an ignorant man equal of any college president. That institution, gentlemen, is a court. Gentlemen, a court is no better than each man of you sitting before me on this jury. A court is only as sound as its jury, and a jury is only as sound as the men who make it up. I am confident that you, gentlemen, will review without passion the evidence you have heard, come to a decision, and restore this defendant to his family. In the name of God, do your duty.
It's a very powerful speech. Thank you for sharing it with us. What a shame that Florida's Stop Woke law prohibits any instruction on race relations. I know the value of To Kill a Mockingbird, and I want my children and grandchildren to read it and to learn about the harm of prejudice and be inspired to fight it as I was.
I have chosen to discuss is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. Frankly speaking, it was not an easy book to read because it was graphically described the horrific experiences of Maya Angelou, the protagonist. Her description of racism, rape, child molestation, abuse are not exaggerations. They are not lies. They are her truth. We should ban this type of behavior. Instead, certain conservatives are banning descriptions of behavior that our society should be ashamed of. Sorry, but it's true. How many people stood up against racism? The lip singings, the shaming, the humiliations that Black people have been experiencing for centuries. Why didn't we ban that? Here's a book that could comfort young Black people who feel so alone in their painful experiences. And here's a book that tells a woman who experienced the worst, who could easily succumb to all, and yet she shows us that she fought back, how she discovered her inner strength and emerged a winner. And here's a story that could inspire others. We can't fix a problem if we don't know it exists. Pretending slavery and systematic racism didn't exist makes it impossible for our country to fulfill its potential of greatness. If we're ever going to achieve the ideal of true equity, we need to know the truth and compensate for the roadblocks that have been delayed it from happening.
Speaking about the truth regarding racism, there is an excellent book that explains things in ways that may be revelatory for many people. The book is Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents. In her book, Isabel Wilkerson tells us to revisit our perspective on the caste system and its effects on American society. She believes that hierarchy, inclusion, and exclusion are still prevalent, and she uses extensive historical analysis and personal narratives to show the ingrained systems that perpetuate inequity based on factors like race and social standing. We may agree or disagree with her perspectives on this subject, but we think that a book like this with controversial ideas has a place in our schools and libraries.
I can see the value of caste, and I understand why such an important book is banned. It threatens a lot of people who just don't want to change. Well, I just finished reading Forever by Judy Blume, and it was an amazing experience for somebody my age who grew up with the double standard for women, especially when it came to sex. So much has changed, and how wonderful it is that authors like Judy Blume have written for today's teenagers. This book has been a frequent target of censorship because of the explicit way it deals with teenage sexuality, including the depictions of sexual intercourse and, to Catherine, the protagonist's use of birth control. Much criticism comes from religious groups and pro-abstinence groups who consider the use of the pill unsuitable. Well, I, for one, think the information young people can gain from the realistic depictions of high school age romances, initial sexual experiences, and a visit to Planned Parenthood are extremely meaningful for teenagers who have a lot of questions and few people they can turn to for honest answers.
I would like to talk about a beautiful book that educates children in a very warm and simplistic way about the existence of homosexuality. The story shows that homosexual relationships are okay, and all kinds of love can create a family. The book I'm talking about is And Tango Makes Three by Justin Richardson and Peter Parnell, illustrated by Henry Cole. It's about two penguins, Roy and Silo, who are attracted to each other, become a couple, and enjoy the special relationship they have. But there's more. It shows how this couple wants what other couples may have, a family. And with the help of others, it happens. What is so amazing is that the author tells us that all the events in the story are true. Two chinstrap penguins living side by side in the Central Park Zoo discover each other, and with the help of a zookeeper, Roy and Silo were given a fertile egg hatched by other penguins who couldn't care for more than one at a time. Magic. Roy and Silo become a family.
Shank, thank you for sharing this book. It's special. Could there be a better way to educate young people about the possibilities of how animals, of which we are as well, can be attracted to members of the same gender and might also want to have a family? And today that's possible. I only wish there was such a book years ago when too many children were scared about the feelings that they were experiencing and felt the need to hide them. They were denied the opportunity to publicly enjoy a loving relationship that could also include a family.
Yes, it's quite sad that years ago, children and adults were denied public acceptance of any form of same-sex relationships. We've come a long way, and yet the book And Tango Makes Three has been consistently challenged for years. The challenges have included complaints that the story is unsuitable for young children because it condones same-sex relationships and families with same-sex parents raising healthy children.
I know this book, and I would like to share the thoughts of a second grade teacher when he was asked why he wanted to teach and Tango Makes Three. He said that one of our main standards in second grade is creating a community. When these students go out in the world, especially in Columbus, which is a big city, they are going to be surrounded with all different types of people. And yes, they might not agree with someone's lifestyle choice, but they still need to be able to accept people for who they are. And if someone were to challenge my teaching of this book, that's what I would explain to them.
I can't tell you how much I wish when I was younger there were books like Gender Queer and Tango Makes Three. These types of books are a tremendous help for people who are different but want no difference in the respect, acceptance, and love that every human being is entitled to. The song from the musical La Cage aux Folles expresses the feeling that all of us have. It is true, this is not a good time for LGBTQ community, but we must not go back in the closet. We must not return to the time when homophobia, segregation, redlining, anti-Asian discrimination, anti-Semitism, and other forms of discrimination were tolerated. Despite every effort to delete what makes each of us special, we should be wise to remember these words. It takes a lifetime to become the best that we can be. We have not the time or the right to judge each other. It's one life, and there's no return and no deposit. One life, and it's time to open up your closet. Life's not worth a damn till you shout out, I am what I am. I am what I am, and what I am needs no excuses. I deal with my own deck, sometimes the aces, sometimes the deuces. It's my life that I want to have a little pride in, and it's not a place I have to hide in. Life's not worth a damn till you can shout out, I am what I am.
Thank you, Mateo. I'm a fan of that song too. Well, I thank each of you for your contributions tonight. I'm afraid we're out of time. We know the list of excellent banned books is endless. I think those of you who shared what you could in the time allotted gave us all an understanding of the harm that comes with banning books. I think most of us here today believe, and I quote, education should be a gateway to enlightenment, not a prison. It is through the exploration of diverse ideas and perspectives that we can truly grow as individuals and as a society. By embracing books, instead of banning them, we empower ourselves to seek the truth, challenge our beliefs, and become more informed and empathetic human beings.
I couldn't agree more. It should be obvious to all of us that what made the election of Donald Trump possible is a lack of shared truths, a lack of knowledge, and sadly, the willingness to accept behavior that is detrimental to a democracy, especially ours. It will take each of us to repudiate Trump's executive orders, his lack of concern for the indiscriminate firing of thousands of federal workers who have kept our country functioning relatively well. His emphasis on revenge, retribution, hate, division, and disrespect for any of us who are different must be emphatically rejected. I firmly believe he doesn't have the right to change the foundation and the character of our country. And I hope that all of you will agree with this.
The truth is, nobody should sleep well thinking we are free from Trump's destructive thinking, behavior, and directives. Together, we must save our country for each other, starting today.
I think we are with you, Darnell. No one here consents to the destruction of our government, our education, social norms, and our economy. Fortunately, we are beginning to fight back. On Saturday, April 5th, something wonderful happened throughout America. There were protests in every city organized by Hands Off. The best part of this movement is nonviolent.
That's right. People are protesting peacefully as a collective community. Another rally was held April 19th, and there was a huge turnout. I think we can take heart that we are finally moving in the right direction. Things will change.
Okay, and now let's hear from members of our audience. Please feel free to share your thoughts and information about effective ways to protest.
Well, now is the opportunity for those of you in the audience to share your thoughts. We welcome any comments, any suggestions, and comments on what you saw, what you heard. As I said at the very beginning, we, as our group, comes together to share our thoughts, and then we like to share with an audience so that we can learn from others as well. So for those of you who are here, thank you for being here, and feel free to tell us what you think.
I think there's one change. I believe the books in the Radnor Library are being put back.
Yeah. Yeah, I
was
actually
going to say that it was reversed.
not
Yeah.
only was it reversed, I have it right here, but ironically, the person who was the leader of the banning says, I made a mistake. I'm so sorry. I met somebody who was transgender and talked about how reading certain books would have helped this person. And he says, now I realize I was wrong and I'm sorry.
Wow.
And wasn't he a school board member?
Yep. Yep. He was the leader.
Yeah.
Babson was in just this past week.
Well, it's nice that he cared enough because most people still wouldn't have admitted to it. They don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else have a thought?
Well, I think that all of the information in this presentation really touched me because I don't watch the news anymore. It's just so depressing and so scary. And other friends of mine that I have talked to feel the same way. I mean, people just, my son, he said, I just can't watch the news more than a couple of minutes because it seems like every day, there's something else. I mean, it's all about it, like all about one part or another. And, I used to work for the federal government and for many, many years, and I retired. And hearing these things that they're doing with all these firings and things like that, I just kind of put myself back in those years and think, gosh, how scary that would be. And just about everything seems to be frightening. And the subject about banning books, I mean, all of the things you just can't imagine happening are happening. And it just makes you not want to know, but then you want to know because you're afraid not to. But that's just the way I feel about it. Everything in this presentation just really, really hit home with me.
Well, we're very grateful that you're with us. So what kind of position did you have with the federal government?
I worked for the Navy Department as a civilian for 37 years. And I worked for as a civilian for the Bureau of Naval Personnel. And that whole command took care of anyone in the Navy who did anything wrong. So it was a very interesting job. Yeah. I was in my time I retired, I was like an administrative assistant to a department head. And I loved it. I really, really did.
That's terrific. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. The silver lining of all that's going on is I think people are beginning to hear from federal workers and what they did. I think most people did not, the idea, oh, well, what are they doing? Nothing special. Now we're hearing about the special things, the wonderful things, the commitment. And hopefully one day we will appreciate the people that we should have all along. Thank you very much for sharing this. You should be writing some articles and sending them into newspapers.
Yeah, it's like I say, I used to watch the news all the time, and of course it was always about Trump, but never thinking that this was really going to happen. And when it did, then all of a sudden things just started to change. People changed, everybody got fired, and all these people that are frightening also are now in charge of everything. And I find that, I mean, it's not just him, it's like the everybody's changed. I mean, it just gets rid of people and fires people and like the Kennedy Center, for one thing. I talked to a fellow that I did some acting with, and he was in a play at the Kennedy Center, which, was going to be, they quit. I mean, they just quit because they didn't want to be there with him in charge. And just a lot of different things that you hear people going through. And you may not be going through them yourself, but you can't help but feel them and be afraid.
Yeah, that's
yeah, everything. I mean, it's just bad.
So I want to say I really enjoyed the show. Thank you so much, everyone, for making this happen. And I'm so glad that I can see some faces the faces of the performers on Zoom meeting as well. So thank you so much. This morning, I just talked with a colleague from a different university, and he had the best review. So he was applying for a grant from NIH. And he got the best review last year, and he was just waiting for the grant to come.
But unfortunately, due to the cancellation of meetings, he hasn't heard anything yet. And in 2 weeks, if nothing happened, he has to lay off several of the people in his lab. That's really a disaster. That's the story that I just hear from someone. It's not something far away from me, I would say, right? That's your colleague who got affected, and it's his lab members who got affected, and then they will lose job, and they cannot find, how can they support their family if they do not have a job? And it's such a unexpected thing, because you have such a good review, you would never expect that you don't get anything. But because of this, things just get so chaotic. So, after watching this show, I can definitely see, there are many, it's just a disaster everywhere. And about the banned books, and thank you for introducing me to those books. Definitely, the fact of them being banned now make me more interested in reading them. So I do have a question, actually. So for those banned books, did books get banned previously as well, or this time particularly there are too many books get banned? And do any of those books get restored? Like, you just share one example, but that's just one example. I'm just wondering about in general. Like after this administration, do many books get restored, things like that?
Who'd like to share an answer?
Books have never been banned.
Yes,
You were-
they have, really.
They
We've had censorship throughout our history, but usually not aimed at children the way they are systematically today.
Mm.
And, I think as I look at this, the key word is all about respect, whether it's respect for the self, respect for the government, respect for the Constitution and the founders and their ideals. The whole system seems to be about destroying an individual's respect for the things they hold dear, so that the autocracy can be, installed in this country. And all the respect will be aimed at the leader. It's happened in Germany, it's happened elsewhere, in the Soviet Union and so on, under Stalin and so on. And the thing that's so, disturbing is that it's the respect for history, the respect for self. Why are these books being banned? It's systematic. The idea is we don't want kids to know, what self-respect is, that their differences are not only, not abnormal, but they're part of living. And the worst part to me is that we have a Congress and even some of the courts that don't even respect the oaths that they took to swear that, allegiance to the Constitution. So they don't even respect that. And we still elect them, and they, expect them to represent what we are as a nation. And I think that it comes down to that to a great extent. We just have to look at people who will respect the rule of law, respect the Constitution, and respect the Republic and our right to decide what it will be. And, we have a critical issue coming up. It's a year from now, but the midterm elections are going to be absolutely critical.
Mm-hmm.
And quite honestly, I think that one of the things we all need to do is decide that we're going to work as hard as we can to get rid of these representatives who do not represent, what we want as a country.
Absolutely. Well, I vote for you. Well, for those of you who don't know, and most of you don't know, Mike used to volunteer after he finished a fabulous career as a professor at Westchester. he worked in the National Constitution Center. So he knows an awful lot about our government.
And he was the judge of elections.
Right. So here's a person who really has done a lot for us, and we do need to do so much more. So thank you very much for sharing all of that.
Thanks for listening. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. But I would like to just say, so that we understand. Now, I included The Giver because it was one of the banned books. Yet one of my nieces said that she was able in Maryland to use The Giver in her classroom. So apparently these things do vary depending on the state you're living in, maybe even the city you're living in or the county that you're living in. And some of them are restored, some of them aren't. But yeah, it's been going, but now it's like just crazy time. If you go to Florida, that seems to be the only thing that the governor's interested in, banning everything that we used to take for granted that was good. Yeah. So anybody else like to share something? Well, I'm glad, Brenda, I'm glad you were able to make it. Diane, I'm glad you're here. Yeah.
I just want to say one thing about the banned books.
Okay, go.
The banned books are, I'm not gonna talk. I just think that they're using it to rewrite history, because a lot of people, some of these books that they're banning are based on people's lives to help them restore. And these are self-help books to help other people, letting them know that they can overcome things as well. And you can't rewrite what history is. History is what it is. Regardless if you rewrite a book, you can't rewrite what already happened.
But as you said, that's what they're trying to do. And that is so obnoxious. I never thought in my lifetime I would see something like this. And it's so overt, they don't even hide it.
Right.
Anybody else?
Well, I just read that Trump is going to reinstate Columbus Day. Now, remember all the hullabaloo over the Columbus statues and everything? I mean, something's fine one day, it's not fine the next day, it's taken away, it's reinstated. I mean, nothing's making sense anymore. No, Biden did Indigenous Persons Day. Now Trump's going to have, I do read the paper and I really have to stop. Yeah.
So when he said that he's going to reinstate Columbus Day, is it Columbus Day or is it the other version?
No, recognizing Columbus.
No, Indigenous.
Calling it Columbus. They think Columbus was an important person and we should remember Christopher Columbus.
But nothing to do with the indigenous people.
No.
Interesting. Yeah. No, it's a very sad time.
And the Gulf of Mexico is a new name, and
right.
I mean, that's
on and
like
on and on.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's water. I mean, who cares? I mean, come on. I was there and they were selling shirts, Gulf of America. I mean,
really? No, it's quite absurd. I've also seen that he's selling hats that say MAGA 2028, and I thought,
no.
what nerve?
No.
Well, the interesting thing is nothing's going through Congress. It's all going through him. And then everything ends up back in the courts and it ends up in the Supreme Court. He's totally negating, doing away with the function of the government the way it's supposed to be. We have elected officials and they're not even getting to be used. He's just doing everything himself.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It is.
Can I ask for your suggestions? So under these uncertain times, how do you keep your sanity? Does anyone want to share your?
Oh my God.
Well, if someone mentioned, don't watch the news.
Yeah, that was me.
That's called denial.
It is.
Well, it's to limit
sanity.
And he's in the news. He's very good at being in the news. And the funny thing is, what everyone may not remember is he had the TV show and his famous line was "You're fired," and that's exactly what that's it.
Yeah,
that was not a joke, and that's who he is.
But who watched it? Did any I never
I
knew
remember
anyone
seeing
watched
some of
it.
it.
I
Yeah.
don't know anybody, but I guess somebody did. It was on for a while.
Yeah,
A lot of people who voted for him, they believed
right.
that he was the genius and he could make all that money and he was going to help the rest of us do that. They forget the fact that all of his casinos went out of business because he was such a terrible businessman.
And he had a university, college thing that was.
Oh, that too, yeah.
Yeah.
He's
He
gone
was
bankrupt
the
6
real
different
estate.
times.
But
That's
he
right.
started with a lot of money.
Right. He started with his father's money. And now I understand that he's finally making that fortune because of the what is that crypto something that he's created,
Cryptocurrency.
Cryptocurrency, I don't
Bitcoin.
even know what that
making
is.
a fortune out of this and all those things that he's selling.
I
That
do have to say he has the most brilliant people working for him. He's not doing all this. It's the people working for him. What they're coming up with is just mind-boggling what they can think of next. It's just unbelievable.
Well, this was all specified in the
Right.
2025 program that the Federalist Society came up with.
Which everyone denied existed. Yeah.
right.
I mean, the plan was out there during the campaign, and, they didn't try to hide anything. He disavowed any association with it, but he's carrying out that plan. He's really kind of a puppet.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's a really very troubling. I certainly will not let him speak in my house. As soon as he comes on television, I turn on something else. He's not allowed, and any of his cohorts, they sound so foolish that I just have to turn it off completely, put on music, leave the room. I can't. Yeah, too upsetting. Well, we thank you for coming, everybody. And this is it for this academic year. We'll be working on things over the summer. And I will have a little reunion for anybody who's living in the area to come together again. But this is what saves me, knowing that we're coming together, sharing our point of view, knowing that I'm with some really wonderful people that really inspire me and give me hope. And so that's one of the main reasons that I can tolerate what's going on. I know one day we will survive.
Well, thank you for pulling this all
Yes.
together. I mean,
Yes, thank you very much.
you have a phenomenal ability. I mean, we've been doing this now since the pandemic, I guess, on
Yeah.
on Zoom. And I think we all have to acknowledge very clearly that this is all working because of all the effort that you put into it.
Yes.
And,
Absolutely.
talking about respect, I want to just say how much I respect what you do and what all the participants in this
That's it.
do. We're remote now. We used to be close, but now we're out in California. But it's just a very valuable and very fulfilling experience. And I want to thank all of you, and particularly you, Alexis, for what you do.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for all of you, I wouldn't be doing it. And Sandy, thank you for joining us and sharing what you did. And Daria, thank you very much for co-hosting today. You kept my sanity because last I thought I was going to lose it.
And your slides were excellent. You couldn't tell which Yvonne did and which you did.
No, it was
No.
beautiful. Very good.
Thank you. Well, take good care of yourselves, everybody. Give our love to Lucy. Tell her we missed her tonight.
Thank you. I will.
I send love and hugs and each and every one of you. Thank you.
Good job, everybody. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Have a great
everybody.
summer.
Well, safe.
Daria, thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
For now.
Bye.
Bye.